That's not a sound you want to hear when you're late for work. Hey, this is Josh with Budget Mechanic. So you get up in the morning, you go to start your car, and the thing just cranks and cranks and won't actually start. But first, this is a video about cranking and not starting. So if you have other issues like absolutely no sound at all when you turn the key, or it clicks, or it just turns over really weakly, those are a separate set of issues. We have a great video on that, which we'll include the link to. Now, when your car is cranking but not starting, the good news is you have a good starter and you have a good battery. A lot of people think that when their car's not starting, it's a starter problem. But actually, if the engine's cranking, your starter's working great. Now, you may think this is dumb, but one of the main reasons for a car cranking but not starting is being out of gas. And this happens a lot more than you think. And I know that we all have gas gauges on our dash, but sometimes if you're getting low and you park on a hill, the next morning you come out, car won't start. This is a pretty simple fix, so I recommend you start with that. So the next one is going to be a failure of a fuse or a relay. So your fuses and relays are safety switches in your electrical system. So if a fuse or a relay goes bad, whatever circuit that was on is no longer going to function. So you're going to want to get into your fuse boxes and check your relays and fuses. There's one under your dash in the cab, and there's one under your hood. So what we're looking for is fuses and relays that have to do with the fuel system and the ignition system. I'm under the hood right now in this fuse box, but those can also be located under the dash in that fuse box. So you look here, the fuses are like these little skinny colored ones that burn out, and then you also have the relays, which are like the bigger ones, usually square plastic, and those fail as well. The other thing to note, a fuse box will usually have the chart of what each fuse is, often printed on the underside of the fuse box cover. If it's not there, you can look up online the model of your car, and then usually you can find a chart pretty easily. So we're looking on this chart for anything to do with ignition, so like this one, IG, or we're looking for stuff like a fuel pump right here. So those kind of things, we're going to find out where they're located in the fuse box, and then we're going to check them. So once I determine what I want to look at, if it's a fuse, there's usually a little fuse puller somewhere in your fuse box, and I use that to grab a hold of these fuses and pull them out. And they're usually translucent, and you can see the little bridge in the window there. And if there's no bridge, or it's burnt or black, you could have a bad fuse, which is not allowing electricity through, and so whatever system that it's controlling won't function. Okay, when it comes time to check a relay, the one thing I like to do is have an assistant get in the car and try to turn it over and put your finger on top of the relay in question. And if it's working correctly, you will feel a little click inside. You'll actually feel it right on the top of it. And if you feel that click, chances are it's working properly. Versus if you don't feel anything, it may be failing. Okay, the other thing I can do to check a relay, because you can't really physically see anything wrong with them, is I can swap relays that are the same. So for example, this one is my ignition. I can take it out. It takes a little wiggling. And I can take one from, I think this is like the horn. Since these are the same, I can put the one from the horn in the place of the ignition. So now, if there was something wrong with my ignition relay, it should work, and that obviously tells me it was the relay's fault. And that just means I need to get a new one. So the next reason your car would crank but not start is a bad sensor of some kind. And there's a lot of them. So sensors are basically your computer's way of knowing the status of all the parts of your car. And it helps it determine when to fire the spark plugs, how much fuel to throw into the mix. So if it has a bad sensor, then it doesn't know when to fire the spark correctly, or it's going to give too much or too little fuel, and all those things can cause your car to not actually start. The main ones that would affect your car not starting are going to be mass airflow sensor, crankshaft position sensor, camshaft position sensor, or throttle position sensor. Those are kind of the main culprits. And on every engine, every car, they're going to be in slightly different places. But the one thing we do have going for us is that when sensors go bad, they often throw a check engine light, which means you can check the codes with a code reader and find out more specifically what's going on. So hopefully, if that's what's happening to your car, your check engine light's been on, maybe even your car's been running a little funny, and you can pull out a code reader. All you have to do is turn the ignition. You don't have to start the car, and hopefully the computer will tell you what that is. And as we've said before, if you don't have your own code reader, you can go to an auto parts store that offers free code reading, and they'll do it for you. Now, it's going to be hard to take a car that's not starting into the shop to get those codes read. So hopefully you have a code reader or a friend with one. If not, you can get them pretty cheap online, $15 to $25, even ones that connect Bluetooth to your phone, and you can use that to actually pull the codes off the computer. Now, it is possible that a sensor is failing and not throwing a check engine light, and there are ways that you can individually diagnose each sensor by pulling it out and checking the pins with a voltmeter, but it's pretty advanced stuff and you need to do a lot of research online in order to do it. So hopefully you don't have to go that route. Now, if you do have a bad sensor and you've kind of tracked down which one it is, it's a replacement issue. Got to get a new one. The next issue that you may be facing is a fuel issue. So a couple things can happen there. You can have a leak in the fuel system. So that would be fuel is escaping somewhere and not getting into the engine where it's needed to start the motor. Or, and what's quite common, is a failed fuel pump. So the pump is not actually even getting the fuel into the motor in a high enough pressure for the car to actually start. We made a great video already on diagnosing bad fuel pump and some of the effects that it has on your power and acceleration. We'll include a link. To diagnose a fuel problem, you're going to use your nose. If you're smelling leaking fuel, check out if you can see leaks under the hood or under the body of the car. Also, you can get a fuel pressure pump test kit from like an auto parts store that has a tool rental program, and you can use that to actually check your fuel pressure and see if the pump is good. Another thing you can do that's a little bit simpler is you can sit in the back seat above where the fuel tank is, and when someone turns the key into the ignition position, you should hear the pump turn on. So it'd be like a buzzing sound underneath you. If you don't hear that, chances are your pump might not be actually turning on, and that could be your problem. So the next reason that your car might not be starting, even though it's cranking, is a vacuum leak. Now, it would have to be a pretty bad vacuum leak to cause your car not to start. So hopefully that means it's pretty easy to spot. So the vacuum system is anything to do with air and air pressure. So it's going to be these air lines, and this is like your big intake, right? So what you are looking for with a vacuum leak is big cracks in hoses, or even hoses that have come loose and disconnect, and that's going to create a massive problem in your vacuum system that's not going to allow your engine to run properly and maybe not even start. Again, most cars will start with a small vacuum leak. This car has like a cracked and loose small vacuum line, but something like this is probably not going to keep it from starting. So look for those big ones. This next one is for older cars. So we're back into the 90s now. On the newer, more modern cars, you have individual coils on each spark plug. So for a V6, you'd have 6 of them. Back in the day, they had one coil pack that would distribute to all the spark plugs. So when that coil pack went bad, the car wouldn't run. So if this applies to you and you have an older style car with a coil pack, you want to go get a spark tester. So it's something that plugs in between the spark plug and the spark plug wires, and it will actually light up if you're getting power to the spark plugs, and that would tell you if your coil's working or not. It's a pretty cheap tool, I think like $20. So the last reason that your car may crank but not start is due to a little something called an inertia switch. Inertia switch. So cars are designed with a safety switch so that in the case of an accident, the fuel is immediately shut off and you don't have big car fires because the fuel pump won't turn off. This can actually get triggered by stuff other than an accident. So I've had cars where the tire went flat on the highway and the vibration from that actually triggered the switch. Maybe you had a small fender bender and the airbags didn't go off, but it was enough impact that it triggered that switch, and now all of a sudden your car won't start. It's a little tricky. You got to know where that thing is located, and that's going to be a research project on your make and model because they hide them all over the place. Under the hood, inside the trim, inside the cab, they can be anywhere. So you've got to look up where your inertia switch is located on your car. And often they can just be reset. It's just a push of a button and you're good to go. Other times you got to replace the switch itself. So if you're having a hard time tracking down why your car won't actually start, but you've had one of these incidences recently, maybe that's something to check out. One of these things should be your problem. So if you track it down and get it fixed, it should be back on the road in no time.